Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the BlitzReportUK NFL podcast. My name's Dylan and I'm joined by my co-host Callum. Callum, how are you feeling about starting on your podcast?
Yeah, no, buzzing for it to be honest. It's been a long time in the works, but we're here. We're ready to talk some American football.
Yeah, we've been discussing it for a while, haven't we? We've tried before, somewhat unsuccessfully, and yeah, we thought it'd be time to give it another go. So I think we're going to start off with what we've thought is the game of the week, the upset of the week, I guess. The Dolphins beating the Bills 30-13. Cal, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, I was watching it last night on Red Zone, and at all points you thought, how long is this going to last? The Bills were. You always thought, oh, the Bills will come back. It's only the Dolphins, but they just kept putting points on the board. They kept scoring, kept touchdown after touchdown, and the Bills weren't responding. Alan, I mean, they say had an off day. He still threw for like 300 yards, but there was a few interceptions in there, which really gave the Dolphins some hope. And yeah, no, I thought it was a good game to watch.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting one. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I mean, the Dolphins moved to 3-7 on the season, which, any year you could pick any of the last 5 years, and a team with that sort of record shouldn't be beating the Bills. I mean, Tua had a pretty Tua day, 173 yards, two touchdowns, two picks. Like I said, Josh Allen over 300 yards, but they only managed to put 13 points on the board. So I think the main talking point though is probably Mr. Achan with his how many over 220 scrimmage yards and
Yeah,
two touchdowns. I mean, he's just kind of the last 2 or 3 years. I know people talk about him a lot in a fantasy respect, but I think he's one of the best running backs in the league. Period.
he's always had the potential. I mean, I remember watching the Broncos get beaten 70-20 by the Dolphins, and he was
I
uh,
remember it well.
all over the pitch in that game. Many touchdowns, many yards rushing, and he's a threat in both aspects. He can take the ball and run with it, or he can throw it to him, and he can still receive him back. And yeah, I mean, two rushing touchdowns, 225, I think, all-purpose yards. That's pretty impressive, and it's quite a nice tool to have on your team.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy, bit more kind of low profile game, but still a very good game. Jalen Waddle. We've spoken here a bit about potential how the Bills wanted to trade for him. So they're offering a first round pick in 2 years' time.
Mm.
But the Dolphins wanted one this coming year. And he ended up with 84 yards on five receptions with a touchdown yesterday against the team that wanted to trade for him. I mean, I think the Bills could definitely do with somebody like him. I mean, thoughts on him and thoughts on the Bills, really. I mean, is it a big concern for them?
Yeah, well, the Bills are an interesting one, and obviously, no doubt, Jalen Waddle would have added to their receiver room. You've obviously got Keon Coleman in his second year, his sophomore year. You've got Shakir, obviously without Matt Collins this year, although and he's doing pretty decent actually in New England. But it's a it's a interesting one, really. I mean, obviously they would have loved him, and it's one of those where the front office will be sat there thinking, "Ah, we could have had that bloke playing for us." Taking away that threat playing today, but or yesterday it was. But yeah, no, Jalen Waddle would have done. I know he was. People were looking for him. I know the Broncos were in for him, but the reported asking price was too high. Obviously, they just wanted a first round for next year, which you look at. I can see why they want it, but I mean, realistically, a Bills first round pick is going to be within the regions of 28 and 32 anyway. So how much is that actually going to add? You don't know. From the Dolphins' perspective, it's sort of like, well, we're going to get. We obviously can pick up a player of quality in that late round or that late of the first round, but you're going to struggle to get a world beater that is expected to be. Um, but yeah, no, I think that it would have been a good move, and I think Miami are probably glad that he was on their side like yesterday.
Definitely. And I mean, yeah, it would have been a nice move for the Bills. I think, Keon Coleman hasn't quite turned out to be what they wanted him to be. And then also going on your point about it's going to be a late first round pick either way. The Dolphins need a lot more than that. Um, I don't really know what they need, but they feel like they have their franchise quarterback in Tua. I would tend to disagree, but where do they really go? Do you think they get rid of Tua? Do you think they kind of because obviously he's on a bigger contract now. Um, is there a rebuild around Tua? Do you think, or do you think they get rid of him and they just scrap it all?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would sort of be in agreement with me if I said that he's not a franchise quarterback. He's shown glimpses of it, but this sort of the interception and the mistake in him is just not what you can have if you're looking to climb the ranks. And I mean, realistically, the Dolphins don't really have any excuse to be as bad as what they are. They've got good running backs, good receiving room. Um, Obviously, unfortunately, what happened with Tyreek Hill, but they've had a good receiving room, good offense overall, and I feel like they've had their if they shouldn't be as bad as what they are, and I feel like that ultimately stems from the quarterback. I'm not entirely aware of his stats this year, but I know he's thrown quite a few interceptions, and they've struggled in games, which obviously they would rather not. And I feel like they've obviously got Quinn Ewers, but I don't know whether he'll come in and make any sort of impact. I feel like what we might see in the next few weeks is if the Dolphins end up benching Tua, playing Quinn till the draft, and then looking to try and find their franchise quarterback. I mean, I know we're going to speak about the draft a bit later and the prospects inside in it, but they are currently picking, I think, around about seventh, which is still perfectly a good place to go and pick up a solid quarterback. And I mean, yeah, I feel like they must. I feel like they've got to move on from him. They've had him. When did he get drafted? Like 4 or 5 years ago. Was
Yeah, it
it?
was
And
around then
he's
sometime.
still just not really sure. The thing is, he's so hit and miss, and he will randomly just throw like a great deep ball, and you're thinking, right, hang on, this is maybe he is the guy, but I don't know. I don't know. For me personally, I feel like they probably see out the season, see where they end up in the draft order, and then. But what draft capital or what trade value does Tour even bring?
So no, it's tough at this point because it's one of those things where he comes with a lot of money, um, as most quarterbacks do nowadays as well. So I couldn't see a team giving up much for him, to be honest. And where does he go? Like, who's gonna really pick him up as a starter? Um, I don't know. I see him sort of. I honestly think he'll stay with the Dolphins for a few more years because I just don't think they really have the kind of. Even if they go downhill, they can. They're not quite bad enough at the moment to really tank for one of the top guys. I mean, I remember this is probably even before you were a fan, but tank for Tua was a whole thing back in the day. Um,
Yeah.
and I think they ended up getting him fifth overall, so it's hardly even a tank. But I think they need some sort of like real spark at quarterback. I don't think it's worth like trading him away and trying to get a few people in. I think you just need to wait it out and get your big kind of star in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like you say, he's on a big contract. How are you going to get him sort of off the books? I don't know. It might just be a situation where they've got to sit and wait out and see at the end of the summer. I suppose he could become a QB2, but I feel like him himself, he's had all this ability in college and has shown glimpses of it in the NFL. Well, glimpses is harsh. I think he's still has shown he's a good quarterback in terms of his few years in the NFL. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like he's going to want a chance, maybe a fresh start. And we've seen with players like who we're going to lead on to in a minute, Sam Darnold, who he's had a few fresh starts and has been a completely different player. I mean, we can move on towards the Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Obviously, in the late window last night, plenty of points going up in all games. But the one we're focusing on here is the Seahawks 44-22 win over the Cardinals. Um, what did you make of it?
I mean, it's kind of been a trend of the season, really. Like the Seahawks are just very good. I don't think anyone expected them to be this good. I mean, Darnold had obviously a career-defining year last year over at the Vikings, but when he signed his big deal with the Seahawks, it was kind of like he's had one good year. They're scrambling a bit, so that's how I felt about it anyway. But he's proved everyone wrong, and he's having another great year. And then, I mean, helped by the fact that he's got potentially the number one wide receiver in the NFL currently. What would you say? Do you think he is?
You have to say so at the moment. I mean, obviously you've got Jamar Chase, who's not really got anyone to. Well, he has got Joe Flacco now, but for weeks he's not had anyone to throw the ball to him. And I don't know. I feel like he's top on yards, and
By
I feel
quite
like
a long
that's
way.
obviously the by a fair way, yeah. And that's quite the important metric when you're talking about receivers. I feel like he's got all that ability, and he's finally. I mean, he's obviously shown he's good in his couple years in the league, but he's now taking it to the next level, and that's obviously aided by having Sam Darnold at quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold last year obviously is no stranger to having a good receiver. You've got Justin Jefferson, who I don't know. He seems to be having a mixed year, but so are the Vikings. Really, they're not at the start of the season. You would have said they'd be better than what they're currently showing. But again, there's a lot of teams in the NFL at the moment that have glimpses of potential and should be doing better that aren't. But like you say with the Seahawks, they're really exceeded expectations in all forms. I mean, they were 35-0 up at one point, and they start their first quarter so brutally that the game was done before it even really begun. I mean, like the fact that they put so many points on the board early, there's only ever going to be one outcome, and obviously Darnold, known for his accuracy, and a player you know all too well, being drafted by the New York Jets.
Yeah, and the other guy who was kind of the similar sort of trade in the off season just gone, the Geno Smith to the Raiders trade is obviously, another ex Jets drafted quarterback that has gone on to have a resurgence. I mean, I love Geno, but like he's having a bit of a stinker this year. But just going back to the Seahawks, they just kind of got weapons wherever you look, to be honest. I mean, Kenneth Walker was and still is a great running back. But they got Zach Charbonnet there as well, who's had a really good game the other night. And then kind of forget that, of course, it was a big off-season move, but Cooper Kupp is their wide receiver too, effectively. Um, and like anytime you've got, I mean, I know he's not in his prime anymore, but still, as a kind of slot guy or a wide receiver too, you definitely want someone like that on your team.
Yeah, I mean Cooper Cup yesterday, 2 receptions, 74 yards. He had a good long ball, deep ball, should I say, from Darnold, who's got an absolute rocket of an arm on him, and well, that's how they scored the first touchdown with Jigba. Just throw it down there, he'll get there. He's quick, got good hands, and yeah, Cooper Cup has been under the radar. You haven't really heard too much about the move yet. He's been doing everything that he has been doing, and I think this is his best game so far this season, even with just 2 receptions. But he's that experience, is such a handy thing to have in the dressing room, and I feel like it'll be more than welcomed. But yeah, no, Sam Darnold. You spoke about Geno Smith. Geno Smith's an interesting one. Obviously, like you say, he's not doing too great in Las Vegas at the moment, and obviously he played against the Broncos the other day. Um, I think this season he's thrown more interceptions than he has touchdown passes,
Yeah.
which is pretty impressive. Although having said that, he's not really got too much of a supporting cast at the Raiders. But yeah, no, I feel like leading back to the Seahawks, I feel like it's got the two good running backs now in Charbonnet and who's on Kenneth Walker. But I feel like is it that high level running back room like what other teams have? Potentially not, but I mean when you've got a Jigba on your team, you've got absolutely every chance. And I mean that defense as well. You've got some key players in there. You know, people talk about the Legion of Boom, but they're trying to rebuild that. But yeah, no, I think the Seahawks look really impressive and a lot better than what you could have expected at the start of the season.
I think your point about the running backs, I think it's probably more effective in this day and not necessarily more effective, but just as effective to have a 1-2 punch like that. Whereas there was this whole debate a couple of years ago about how the running back position is undervalued and you can pick up a decent running back anywhere and win. And I think the Chiefs especially have kind of shown that. I mean, the Eagles have of course had Saquon last year, but I don't think you need that kind of true RB1 like Derek Henry, Saquon, those sort of guys. I think a 1-2 punch like Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. I mean, you can't really compare it to Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery because Jameer Gibbs is significantly better than either of those two guys. But just having two kind of high level running backs, I think, is almost just as good as having one elite level guy at this point. And speaking of running backs, actually, there are probably two clear favourites for the Offensive Player of the Year up to this point, JSN being one of them. The other one, in my opinion anyway, being Jonathan Taylor. Um, I've got it written down here. I mean, it just seems absurd. Like 1,139 rushing yards plus 260 receiving yards, 17 total touchdowns so far through 10 weeks. I mean, that is just insane numbers.
It's it's every week you watch him and you think, is he gonna do it again? And he does it every week, week in, week out. And you just think, well, I would personally, I know the MVP is a quarterback award, a quarterback award, but why? I don't understand why he couldn't be up there in the running. I mean, I suppose they've now sort of made it that the MVP tends to always be a quarterback, and the offensive player of the year is always just any other position essentially. But there's a good reason that Jonathan Taylor could be the MVP. I mean, is like you say, his stats are a joke, right? And that Colts, he literally drives the Colts. Obviously, Daniel Jones is playing out of his skin this season, but yeah, Jonathan Taylor's just at another level, isn't he? Yeah, I personally would have him definitely in the running ahead of in Jigba, but that's take nothing away from Jigba. Like you say with the stats, he's got over 1,000 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns already. And well, Jonathan Taylor's projected yards is a joke. He's projected just shy of 2,000, and that's obviously he's getting better game by game, right? I feel like if he plays like he did last game, he's got every chance of breaking that 2,000 bracket.
I think what we were saying about the MVPs there, you mentioned after about how well Daniel Jones is playing. I think that's the only thing that would stop someone like Jonathan Taylor from winning it is, he's not like, yes, he's having an incredible season, but he's not the kind of only one on his team. And not that you have to be the only great player on your team, but someone like Derek Henry 4 or 5 years ago when the Titans got to the AFC Championship, and basically every play call was give Derek Henry the ball. And then this is why it ends up being a quarterback thing for the most part, because every year there's a receiver or a running back or even a defensive edge or something, and people are saying, oh, well, if he doesn't win it, then it proves it's just a quarterback award. And I do agree with that sometimes. Like, the Derek Henry's crazy year, I think he should have won it then. Saquon had a case last year. Cooper Kupp had a case in his crazy year. But at the end of the day, it is always going to be the quarterback who really drives that team forward. And, unless somebody, I don't know, breaks rushing or receiving record and has like 30 touchdowns, I really just don't see it happening for a while, which is sad because it should, but it's just the way it goes. And I don't really know how we're going to break out of that. It's kind of become the offensive player of the year is just the best receiver or running back, really. And it is a shame. Like, they should either rename it or just do it properly, I think, but it's just kind of the way it goes. Um, and then quickly, we've got at the end here the other team who happened to be in this game, but might as well have not been, was the Cardinals. Um, what are your thoughts on them? I mean, they're obviously, they've struggled for the last few years. They're 3-6 on the year this year. Jacoby Brissett, actually had a good game. I mean, 50% completion, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns. Um, Apart from that, Trey McBride had a very good game, 127 yards and a touchdown. He's kind of the shining light on that offense, really. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been pretty disappointing, at least this year. Where do you think the Cardinals go from here?
they're an interesting one, like you say. Well, I mean, they scored 22 points in the end, but a lot of it come too little, too late. Um, yeah, I think they're an interesting team. They've obviously decided to play Jacoby Brissett instead of Kyler Murray, and they've sort of gone for this idea that they sort of want a pocket passer. Obviously, Kyler Murray's he has his he's I don't know how to describe Kyler Murray. I feel like he's got ability, but for a small quarterback who tries to skate evade the pocket. Obviously, there's moments where that's a positive, but they're obviously moving towards a pocket passer. And I know we're going to speak about the draft in a minute, but it feels like this could be a year where they might look at the draft and see if they can find themselves a quarterback, a more exciting quarterback than Brissett, and try and find someone for the future. Essentially, if it seems like they've given up on Kyler Murray, then there's a way to go about that. Obviously, James Conner's injured for the Cardinals, who's a big part of their run game. Um, Other than that, like you say, you've got Trey McBride, who's been really good um, and promising. I mean, his touchdown yesterday was some good skills in terms of turning and getting the ball over the end zone. Yeah, his touchdown was good, but I just feel like there's potential in the side. Obviously, a few injuries have flaunted that, but I feel like potentially they could look in the draft to go big, try and find. Yeah, we'll move on to the draft in a few minutes' time when we talk about the Jets and the Browns. But I feel like they're, well, yeah, they're. It's an interesting one. I feel like there's potential in the franchise. I feel like if they get the draft right this year, they could look towards a more positive record and a good future.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the draft here. To move on to a game with extreme draft implications at the top end of the draft, that is. As you've labeled it here, the El Tankico. The Jets managed to make it 2 wins in a row. It's never something I thought I would say against the Cleveland Browns. Um, I mean, we still can't exactly say that, despite scoring 27 points, 14 of, well, 12, I suppose, technically, uh, came from punt and kick returns. um, and Justin Fields had, I believe, his fourth game of the season with less than 60 passing yards. So, and you've written down a nice stat here. So he had 54 passing yards in total yesterday. 42 of them came from one play, a little check down to Brees Hall, where he threw it behind the line of scrimmage, and it was all yards after catch. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
thoughts on this game in general, this horror show of a game.
I don't, I don't even know where you start. I mean, obviously, two teams who have been struggling. Two teams that need quality in the draft. Like you say, Justin Fields. It feels like the experiment with him has sort of come to a close. I mean, did was it Tyrod Taylor that you used as your QB2, and then
It
he
was,
got
yeah.
injured. Justin Fields is back in.
Yeah, we tried to
Um,
bench Justin Fields and he just wouldn't let us. He wouldn't let himself leave.
doesn't let go, and yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously Garrett Wilson came back from injury and then didn't see out the game again. Brees Hall's a bright spark as always, and fortunate enough that he wasn't traded away at the deadline to Kansas City. But I mean, the squad has been massacred. Has been taken two of the bright chunks out of it. Um, yeah, it's just obviously Brees Hall's. Well, I suppose you build around Brees Hall essentially and Garrett Wilson and keep them to there. I know that in the on the trade deadline you said that their value was too high. To Garrett Wilson was untouchable, invincible. You couldn't trade for him. I know there would be plenty of teams making calls in terms of him, and I feel like yeah, I just it feels like two teams that need a lot of work, a lot of talent.
Definitely does, and I think the ironic thing is, the other Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner, who are obviously both gone now. They were, they both loved the franchise, were very much advocated for wanting to stay. I understand why they were the two traded because they probably had the most value. But you got Brees Hall out here crying to be traded effectively. We could probably get a decent haul for him, and he's the one who ends up staying. So got to feel a little bit bad for him. But he had another good game yesterday. Um, haven't got his exact stats up here, but I think he had over 100 scrimmage yards again. But yeah, it's just, I mean, the Jets have obviously come into a lot of draft capital now, which is going to be
Mm.
huge for the next few years. Um, I just don't really. It's kind of surprising that you know. I say it's surprising. We probably looked about the same yesterday without Sauce Gardner and without Quinn and Williams as we had before, and we're three first rounders, two first rounders, and two players better off than we were. Two decent players as well. Um, so I'm honestly, it took a bit of getting used to, but I think we've done well out of it in the end. And Sauce Gardner fell over yesterday, so um, so
Yeah, no, I think you did really well. That Sauce Gardner trade, especially, I feel like, yes, he's a great player, but two first rounders, you've got an absolute war chest of draft picks. So, I mean, there's plenty to look forward to in the next two drafts. And I feel like once you've reached, if you, I think that you've got five first rounders coming up, over the two drafts. If you can put that to use, I mean, there's definitely potential. All you need, well, I say all you need. Um, Sometimes all it takes is a good quarterback pick, maybe an O lineman, and maybe
seen enough O
someone to make
linemen recently. I need
on
something
defense.
exciting.
Well, you have, yeah, yeah. I feel like this will be the year where you look for your next best quarterback. I mean, just before we touch on the draft, I mean, you've got the Browns who are also in a bit of problems, quarterback dramas. Many Browns fans have called for Shadur to take to the pitch. I mean, Dylan Gabriel just seems like, I'm not sure on the. I don't like to. I mean, he's only played what 10 games. I don't like to shoot a young quarterback, like bring him down. But I feel like at the same time there isn't. I just can't see many upsides to a small left-handed quarterback, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but at the same time, he was what, a third round pick, like I don't think anyone was expecting much of him, and they had this crazy quarterback carousel. So like whether it's time to bring up whether there are other 12 quarterbacks, then who knows? I don't see why you wouldn't just chuck Shadur in for a game or two, unless they think Dylan Gabriel is going to be the guy. But there was enough hype around Shadur. He was obviously like the big story of the draft and a mixed bag of opinions on him, both talent and kind of personality wise. I don't see why they don't just, you know, give them both a go because Gabriel is not looking. I mean, yeah, like you said, don't want to shoot him down, and no one expected much of him, but he certainly hasn't, excelled or anything. So yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be time for it, and they would be somebody. Well, I don't know. Do you think after investing two picks this year in quarterbacks that they would obviously they're up near the top of the draft order. Do you think they'd go in for another quarterback if one were to come up early on?
This is the question. I mean, although they've taken two quarterbacks last year, they've obviously had Joe Flacco on the books. They've had many other quarterbacks in and around the squad. It just feels like, are any of them actually top level quarterbacks? No, not really. I mean, Joe Flacco obviously was in his day, but like, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't rule out a quarterback draft pick for them. I feel like they're a team that have, well, that, like you say, they've drafted twice, but all of them being low round picks. Not really. Their main player was Mason Graham in the draft, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of, in my opinion, plenty of good draft prospects out there. We don't know how good they are really yet. I mean, I've got the main ones looking at, but there's many teams that could be looking for a quarterback. If I just tell you the top seven, Tennessee Titans obviously already got their quarterback. The Saints, Tyler, however you pronounce it, Schoff or
Chuck.
Tyler Show, Shuck. He had a good game yesterday. He did look good. In a Saints win, although albeit against a weak side. But he showed potential, but he is like 32 years old, so like, but I don't know whether he can be your quarterback going forward. So they're one that I doubt they'll draft. Well, they could again. It's the same as the Browns. They could draft again, but I don't know. They might let it play out again. Obviously, they've decided to leave Spencer Rattler for the time being. The New York Giants definitely don't need a quarterback. Jackson Dart has shown plenty of promise. You got then the Browns, the Jets, the Raiders. So you'd assume that in that list you've got the Saints that might draft. You got the Jets. You got Las Vegas who will want a quarterback, and then obviously if Miami want to move on, if they move on, then that could be the way. If they they might end up getting rid of Mike McDaniel at the end of the season. I know they said that they were going to try and see it out. Um, but if it turns out that Mike McDaniel goes and they get someone else in and they're not a fan, it might be a turn to the draft. And obviously, there's potential for other teams to draft that, trade up and get the pick. I mean, like we mentioned, the Cardinals as well. But there's plenty of prospects on the table. I mean, I wrote down a few of Fernando Mendoza, who is looking incredible at the moment. He's that good that they bring in his brother to end the game because he's gone up by that many points. They bring in his brother, which is quite cool to have your brother as QB2. You've obviously got Ty Simpson at Alabama, Lenoris Sellers at South Carolina. The thing with these players are you don't know whether they're going to declare this year. I mean, Lenoris Sellers, for example, is 20 years old. Like he could have another year in college, but despite showing the potential, and then you've got players like Dante Moore and Garrett Nussmeier to sort of round off the sort of highly rated quarterbacks on the list. I mean, yeah, I personally like Sam Leavitt, who's Arizona State. He's been thrown to Jordan Tyson, obviously a great connection there. But yeah, there looks like there's some talent at quarterback at the moment, albeit obviously we don't know how good it'll end up being. But there's quite a few teams in need of a quarterback. Who, if you were the Jets front office, who would be your choice?
I think Mendoza is kind of the consensus front runner. I really like Ty Simpson. I like Dante Moore. I've heard a lot of good things about Dante Moore, especially. So, I mean, still a lot of the season to play out in that as well. So, I'm going to keep a bit of a closer eye on all of them. I just think, looking at this draft order, of course, we're far from being set in the draft order, but if it were to stay like it is now, and it's probably not going to change too much, it's going to be the same sort of teams. I could see so many trades happening there because Tennessee don't need a quarterback. The Saints, I arguably do need a quarterback, but used a pick on
Mm.
Shuck last year, used a pick on Rattler the year before. So they've got stock invested in those two guys, and I don't really see them moving straight on. So I feel like they would take a, sort of best receiver or edge available or something. The Giants, obviously, you said don't need one. So just in that top three, one, two, three is typically going to be your quarterbacks or your kind of top players. So I could see a lot of trades happening just within that. And then yeah, Cleveland and the Jets is where you start to get to the real sort of like quarterback talk. I'd honestly Mendoza, Simpson, and Moore. I'd be happy at this current moment with any of them. I need to see a bit more of them. I haven't really identified any kind of other guys outside of those three that would likely be up in those sort of realms of the draft. Yeah, someone like Nussmeier, but I think he's going to be more of that kind of second round guy, it seems. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the Jets are going to go with these five first round picks, but I'm fairly confident there's going to be a quarterback in there. There better be a quarterback in there. Um, but yeah, it's too early to call. We got so many needs. But yeah, I'd be happy with any of those top three guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential in all of the draft, as is every year, most years. You've got edge players like Ruben Bain. You've got receivers like I mentioned Jordan Tyson, but Carnell Tate I really like. He's got a good highlight reel. Makes some impressive catches. I feel like, and the formula in recent years has been, if in doubt, just draft an Ohio State receiver and they'll hit 1,000 yards already. And that's exactly what Carnell Tate is, playing for Ohio State. I mean, I feel like any of there's plenty of picks, and a team like Tennessee might go for an edge rusher like Ruben Bain, or they might end up just thinking, you know what, we're going to go for Carnell Tate. We're going to set the bar high, go and show intent, give Cam Ward some weapons. I feel like what you can see Tennessee doing is trading down and then picking the likes of Carnell Tate, Ruben Bain early on, or like Saints. Saints could be a good one to go take a receiver out the gate, or again, they probably need someone on defense that's that will make a play. So I feel like those are sort of, and the Giants will want to. Obviously, they've got Malik Neighbours already. I feel like the Giants have already got Abdul Carter. They're just the Giants feel an interesting team, and it feels weird to see them this far down. Obviously, they lost Malik Neighbours with injury for a while. But it's interesting to see where they go. If they go for Malik Neighbours and Carnell Tate, for example, that would be outrageous. That show real intent, all in on Jackson Dart, and hope for the best. But yeah, I think that's that's what we got. That's a good selection of quarterbacks, good draft, and we'll see how the rest of the season pans out.
Definitely. So, I think we'll leave it there for today on the first episode of the Blitz Report UK NFL podcast. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back hopefully later this week with some previews of the upcoming week, a bit more sort of in-depth talk about some players, some different games. But yeah, thanks for watching.